Gone are the days of Thanos being the big baddie of the MCU. So who is the king in the post-Endgame era when it comes to MCU villains? Let's find out. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. Today, I've got a fun MCU tier list video where I'm going to be ranking all of the post-Avengers Endgame MCU movie villains. Emphasis on the movie, because there are a lot of show villains that I'm not going to be talking about in this video. Just wanted to stay in the world of movies. But I've got my tiers. I got all of the villains in order of movie release, so we're starting with Black Widow, ending with Thunderbolts. There are some movies that have multiple villains, and I'll touch on that when we get there, obviously. But before I get into this, hit that like button, comment down below your ranking of the MCU villains post-Endgame, who's the worst and best. Of course, subscribe and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers here on the channel. I mean, quite a bit. And without further ado, I say we just dive into this thing. There are about 24, I think, villains that I've selected. There are probably some minor movie villains in some of these that I left off intentionally, but I don't think I forgot any of the major ones, so I say we just get into this. So the tiers I've got are S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, and F tier. Again, your standard tiers, and again, 24 villains in order of movie. So starting out, we've got the movie Black Widow, which is solid. The villains were the weak point, though, and the first villain on this list is Dreykov, who I'm going to go ahead and throw in the F tier. This guy is a boom. I mean, just your run-of-the-mill average Joe villain who is an evil guy that we don't really know. He's basically just a scumbag. That's it. There's no depth to him. He's just a horrible dude, and about as generic as they come. So when it comes to forgettable MCU villains, he's pretty high on the list. Along with him, Taskmaster, who we get to see briefly in Thunderbolts, is next, and I think Taskmaster, also an F-tier villain. I will go a hair above Dreykov with Taskmaster because of her skills, the way that she fights and copies her opponent's fighting style. She like studies it as it's happening and is able to sort of recreate that in her own way. That's a unique skill set, okay? Plus, the suit design's pretty cool in that film, but the big reveal in the way they handled Taskmaster, really disappointing in Black Widow. So that movie, definitely not known for its villains, okay? There is a family dynamic at its core that works, but the villains have always been the weak point of that movie. And Dreykov and Taskmaster, two of the worst villains in the post-Endgame era. Moving on to Shang-Chi, we've got Wenwu, one of the better MCU villains in the post-Endgame era, mainly because this is Shang-Chi's father. And there is this father-son dynamic between the two of them, but it's not like, oh, I love my dad so much. Like, this is so feel-good. It's tragic, and you get some flashbacks that display how Wenwu, like, is running the show back when Shang-Chi's a kid, and you see what Shang-Chi was exposed to at such a young age. So I'm going A tier with Wenwu. I think that, you know, him and Shang-Chi have some moments that pull on the heartstrings. You're emotionally invested because of the familial connection he has to our main lead of the film, and his power set's pretty cool as well. So I'm going to say Wenwu, one of the better villains we've gotten in this post-Endgame era. Then we go back to the next movie, Eternals, and we kind of take a dip down. We got three villains from this movie, believe it or not. The first one is Ikaris, who wasn't marketed as villain because it was a big twist that Ikaris was one of the villains. And I'd say Ikaris is the best villain of the film. I think he's one of the best, most fascinating characters from Eternals. Richard Madden plays him really well. I'm going to go C tier with Ikaris. You know, skill set wise, he's got basically the powers of like a Superman type, you know? He's super strong, he can run really fast, he can fly, he can shoot lasers out of his eyes. So in terms of a villain, his views on the world, he's just misguided. He's misguided, and so it makes for some internal butting of heads with the Eternals and how they view the world and their roles respectively. And so there is some depth to him. That's why he's not like an outright god-awful villain in F tier or like D tier. He's C, like middle of the road to meh, but better than the two other villains in the films. Crow being one of them. I think there was an interview with Bill Skarsgård, who, by the way, plays Pennywise in the live-action It movies, and he was talking about how he did the voice for this, and he had, like, no clue what was going on. And I thought that was hilarious because I always forget this character even exists in the MCU. He's one of the deviants, I believe, and honestly, the lore of Eternals has kind of gotten lost on me over the past 4 years. Each year, I forget about this movie more and more, unfortunately, because I do think there are some, you know, standout characters in that movie. But, man, there's way too much going on. So I'm going to go D with Crow. And, you know, I think that's too generous. I'll go F. I'll go, like, right here in the middle of F. Actually, maybe the back. I mean, Crow, a CGI character who's, like, 8 feet tall, and is a physical force for Erisham, the judge, who's the next villain on this list. Arishem, also very forgettable villain. Deep bellowing voice in the galaxy. Rah. Okay, whatever. I'm going D tier with Arishem. We're never going to see these characters again, so talking about them kind of feels like a waste of time. Arishem the Judge, you know, at the end of the film, takes some of the Eternals, Cersei and a few others, and it's like this big cliffhanger ending, and we're just never going to see him or anyone from that movie again. And so that forever will be like the biggest what could have been in the MCU, right? Like these characters, it could have been this cool world they set up. We're never going to see Arishem, Crow, Icarus, none of them ever again. So, see ya. Moving on to the next movie, we got Spider-Man No Way Home. And first, we got to talk about Green Goblin, played by Willem Dafoe. The man doesn't miss a beat. He steps right back into this role perfectly, and I have been of the opinion forever that Goblin in the Raimi trilogy, specifically he's in the first film, is the best Spider-Man live-action villain we've seen. And so to see him come into the MCU, Willem Dafoe come back into this role and, you know, deliver yet another iconic performance, it's special. We were witnessing greatness in No Way Home, and to me, it feels like cheating. It feels unfair to say this, but I think Willem Dafoe's Goblin is the best MCU villain in the post-Endgame era. The reason it feels cheap is because he already existed, and he had like this great backstory and setup in a film from 2002 that was never envisioned to be a part of the MCU when it initially released, but years later, almost 20 years later, he gets another shot at it. But why he is the best, in my opinion, is he's still a menace. However, there's a moment in the film where he's actually trying to be good. He's just confused, but he snaps. The Goblin persona takes over. And it's when Peter has this Peter Tingle moment in the apartment, and that's when he delivers the line, "Norman's on sabbatical, honey." From that moment on, he's full menace Goblin. He's whooping Tom Holland's Peter's ass in that apartment complex, slamming him through floors of the apartment building. He kills Aunt May, and at the end of the movie, he's still bloodthirsty. He wants to kill Peter. He damn near does kill Tobey's Peter. He is, to me, the best villain in the post-Endgame era, and so for that reason, I'm going top of S tier with Dafoe's Goblin. He is the king of Spider-Man villains, dare I say, to open the door to a whole nother conversation. Let me know down below where you rank him in Spider-Man movie villain terms. Moving on to another villain in No Way Home, we got Doc Ock. Less of a villain in this movie. Like, he starts out as one. Hello, Peter, on the bridge. He has that whole fight scene, but then he realizes this isn't my Peter Parker, and then they obviously end up fixing him, Otto Octavius, that is. They, you know, override the chip in the back of his neck, so he's back to himself, and the voices are quiet in his head. I think as a pure villain, I mean, if we're going, you know, looking at it from Spider-Man 2, he's S tier, but if we're looking at his role in No Way Home as a villain specifically, he kind of shifts gears about half through the movie and is no longer a villain. He ends up helping out in the end, actually. So I'm gonna go B tier. Even then, he should probably be A, but I'm just looking at his role in the MCU as a villain. If I were counting his role as a villain in Spider-Man 2, he'd be S tier, but I'm not. I'm just talking about his role in the MCU. So that's something that you need to know before getting mad at me, because I love him. Doc Ock is right there with Green Goblin to me, but Goblin had a lot more to do as a big bad villain in the MCU as opposed to Doc Ock. Next, we've got Electro, played by Jamie Foxx. You know, he was fine. It was cool to see him back. I think all the Spider-Man movie villains that return in No Way Home are a lot better in their respective movies. They have more depth and more of a reason for being there, more of a vendetta against Peter. They're kind of just used here to give us an opponent for our three Spider-Men to face off against, essentially, right? We'll go still B tier with Electro. You know, it's maybe the best look he's had. I think he looks better in this film than he does in TASM 2. Still, not a ton of meat on the bone there. Sandman, I can't go B tier with. I think Sandman's one of the most underrated live-action Spider-Man villains, but in the MCU, we'll go top of C tier. He's barely in the movie, really. And same can go for Lizard. I'm going to put Lizard right here. C tier. I think those would be higher villains if we were ranking them based on their appearances in Spider-Man 3 and TASM, but we're talking about their villainous role in the MCU. They're kind of just confused for half the movie, and then like, we might as well fight, right? So there you go. Next, we got Scarlet Witch, who is a villain in Multiverse of Madness, and a pretty solid one at that. I mean, she is really easy to root against, in my opinion, in this film, especially after the events of WandaVision, where she held an entire town captive just so she could live with her family in peace, but she put all these other people through a mental hell for months and months. So pretty evil what she did. Twisted stuff going on with Wanda behind the scenes. She is maybe her most powerful, maybe, in this film. I would say Scarlet Witch in this movie, there's a lot of, great lines between her and Strange, and I can see why people side with her, kind of going the Civil War route, where you feel, oh, I feel pulled to Tony in this scene, but Cap's got me won over in this scene. You kind of have moments like that with Scarlet Witch and Strange. At the end of the day, she is a mother who loves her family, and she's, torn apart by the fact that she can't be with them. So I'm going to say Wanda in Multiverse of Madness is B tier. I'll put her like right here. Honestly, as a villain in the MCU, she's pretty solid, so I gotta go top of B tier. I still hated her after that movie. I haven't rewatched Multiverse of Madness in 3 years, but I remember being like, man, Wanda was hateable in that movie. So kudos to Marvel for committing to the villain bit with Scarlet Witch. Moving on, we've got Gore the God Butcher. Ah, yes, when the MCU wasted Christian Bale. That's Batman right there. And he's a villain, and I bet you forgot that this ever happened. It's a shame, because now we're never going to get Christian Bale in a legit role in the MCU. It was just inappropriate. And I don't mean that in a sense of oh, how dare they? It's just the use of such a serious, dark villain, it felt inappropriate in a film that was a full-blown comedy. It just felt out of place and odd, and because of that, I'm going to say Gore the God Butcher is a D tier villain. I'm going to go right here, top of D tier. Pretty one note at the end of the day. Bale's giving it his all, but the movie wastes him, and by the end, he kind of just becomes a nobody. It was frustrating. I really thought they were going to dive further into this character, and they just did nothing with him. It was a very surface level approach to a villain, and Bale deserved better. He deserved a better MCU movie. Moving on, we've got Namor, who will be back in Doomsday. One of the most shocking cast reveals right there. I'm going to say Namor from Wakanda Forever is a solid villain. I'll go B tier with Namor. I'll go right here. Very solid villain, exploring Talokan and that all world. I believe that's the name of the city. Very interesting to see the, moves that he makes. He does something evil in this film as he kills, the Queen. He kills Black Panther's mother. That's tragic to see. So he doesn't hold back in this movie. He's a well-written villain, and I'd say he's solid. None of these villains have really blown me away. There's a select few that are high on this list. But Namor, for what he had to do in that film, functioned well as a villain, and what really puts him higher on this list than others is you see his point of view fully. You get an understanding of why he fully believes in what he does believe via flashbacks, and so he's fleshed out and he's understood. And some of the best Marvel villains, you can actually understand why they're doing what they're doing. Namor, you can fully understand why he is, so steadfast in his beliefs. Moving on, we've got Kang. What could have been with Kang? I mean, I feel like that's the case with a lot of these actors in roles like Bale. But yeah, Jonathan Majors really knocked it out of the park as Kang in Quantumania, and the Loki show was giving us more depth to who Kang is, especially at the end of season 1. It was this big reveal, and Kang was being, set up to be the Thanos of this next era of Marvel, and unfortunately, we're never going to see him again. At one point in time, Avengers Kang Dynasty was going to be the next Avengers movie. That is no more. So we can really, say goodbye to Kang in the MCU, maybe forever. Disappointing, definitely. If you were to ask me about this when Kang Dynasty was still on the table, I'd probably go higher with Kang, but right now, C-tier villain. He ended up getting taken down in Quantumania. Granted, there are tons of variants of Kang, and we were going to see all of them in an Avengers movie, which would have been really awesome, but that ship has sailed, and so I've kind of moved on from it. And like I continue to say in these MCU videos, when Quantumania comes up, that movie becomes less relevant with every passing day, just like Kang, unfortunately. So I'm going to say Kang is top of C tier, because still, the screen presence, when he would walk into the room, you kind of listen, you go, shh, okay, Kang's here, let's see what he's got. He was powerful. That specific variant did end up losing to Ants. I know that's the hot topic, but it shows more that he got outsmarted, in my opinion, but still. Anyway, C tier, and we're moving on to High Evolutionary from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I'm going A tier with High Evolutionary. I'm actually going to go top of A tier, because I think he's one of the most hateable Marvel Cinematic Universe villains, period. I wanted to punch this man in the face. I wanted to jump into the movie and whack him right in the face because of how evil he is and cruel he is to Rocket and company. He is despicable, the lowest of lows of humanity, and this guy really is just a disgusting individual. And when you watch a Marvel movie and you hate a villain that much, they're doing something right. So because of the emotional response I had, I wanted to hit this guy. That's how you know this villain is great. And so I'm going top of A tier with High Evolutionary. Hard to think of a more pure, evil, wicked villain in the MCU than High Evolutionary. Just a twisted individual. Moving on, we've got Dar-Ben. And you're probably wondering who's Dar-Ben. Dar-Ben is the villain of the Marvels. One of, if not the single most forgettable villains in the entire MCU. In all honesty, I think I gotta go back of F tier because I at least remember some moments with Dreykov and Taskmaster. Crow, hard to miss, like a 9-foot-tall CGI thing. But Dar-Ben, what? She's maybe the most forgettable singular villain in the MCU. I'm going back of F tier. That movie, the Marvels that she's in, it's messy as hell, and a lot of that is due in part to her role. And again, we're probably never going to see her again. She was a one-off villain, but I had to look up this villain's name because I didn't remember until I went to film this video. So that's sad. She's the most forgettable villain on this list by a country mile, mind you. Next, we got Cassandra Nova. This is the Deadpool and Wolverine main villain. She had a screen presence about her for sure, and some moments where you're like, man, this girl's evil, she's messed up in the head, especially the way she's playing games on Wolverine, and he's having to relive some of his trauma, his past moments in his universe where he failed his X-Men. So she can play mind games with people really, really well. I don't know if she's some groundbreaking villain. There are definitely better villains in this era, but I'm gonna go B tier with Cassandra Nova, probably right here. Right about there in the middle of B tier. I thought that for the movie, kind of being the head honcho of the Void, I thought that worked. People feared her, saying her name instilled fear in others, so that works. She could have been a better villain, but for that story they were trying to tell, I think she was serviceable. And then you got Mr. Paradox, played by Tom Wamsgans himself. That is the character from Succession. Obviously, this is Matthew Macfadyen, the actor, the Emmy winner, mind you. I would say Mr. Paradox is another one of those villains who kind of goofy, has a lot of comedy early on, but really is responsible for moving the plot forward in the third act of Deadpool and Wolverine. He's pulling some strings behind the scenes, doing some dirty work behind the scenes. I'm going to say Mr. Paradox. I don't know if I can go outright B. I'll go C with him, probably right here, honestly. He had some memorable moments in that film, and definitely evil, but there are better villains again. Like I said, Cassandra Nova is the main villain you think of in Deadpool and Wolverine. Moving on, we got Captain America Brave New World with 3 villains. I know that's crazy to say, but the first is going to be the leader, Samuel Stearns. Our king, right? No, I'm kidding. This is Tim Blake Nelson from The Incredible Hulk. He's back after, 2008 to 2025. That's a hell of a gap right there to take off. But he's back, and the character design was questionable, not the most menacing, or it might be horrifying, actually, but not in the way they were intending. Look, this is the weak point of Brave New World. I've kind of defended this movie. I gotta rewatch it, but I don't think it's perfect. I think it's very flawed. The biggest flaw being this main villain, who's very one note. A lot of the decisions that he makes, I question, and he's supposed to be so brilliant and so smart, and I just felt like that wasn't the case throughout the movie. I was like, I question why this guy's doing what he's doing. And a lot of the times he's hidden in the shadows because apparently there was a whole overhaul on the actual character's design, which shocks me. I don't know. This character's a mess. Honestly, I got to go D tier. I feel right in the middle of D tier with the leader because he is the worst part of Brave New World. And when your main villain is this weak, it drags the movie down, unfortunately. So the leader, Then we got Sidewinder, played by Giancarlo Esposito. His screen presence automatically puts him over the leader. We should have had more of Sidewinder. He had a couple scenes that really stood out. There's one where he pulls up on Sam when Sam's driving his F-150, and he's just throwing grenades at him and shooting rounds at him in the street, reloading. I'm like, this guy's badass. Give me more Sidewinder, please. So his screen presence actually instills more fear in me than the leader. I'm gonna say that Sidewinder's C tier. They planted the seeds for him in this movie. I think that he can have a bigger role as we move forward, especially in the street level side of things. Could have had a much more significant role, but because it's Giancarlo, because he steals some scenes in that movie, I do think he's better than the leader, and he's better than Gore. I'm gonna go right here, back of C tier with Sidewinder. And then we've got Red Hulk. Thunderbolt Ross is not necessarily a villain in this movie. He's the president, but he kind of gets corrupted over the course of the film because of his experiments with what the leader's been giving him. That's what ultimately turns him into the Red Hulk, his blood. But yeah, I'm gonna say the Red Hulk specifically really great CGI, in my opinion. I know that the CGI was a big talking point of this movie, people saying it looked awful, but to me, it looked great when he was Red Hulk, that is. I'm going to say Red Hulk is a C-tier level villain. The design's great. He does kick some ass, and you feel for him in a sense, especially the relationship he has with his daughter, but Harrison Ford plays the role really, really well. So I'm going to say Red Hulk, probably like right here, in my opinion. Above the two Spider-Man villains who return, above Icarus, above Sidewinder. I'd still say Kang and Paradox are over him, but Red Hulk, very, fine. A Marvel villain, like, yeah, pretty solid, maybe, even but right in that middle tier where you can kind of go either way, teetering on the line. Then we got the last two villains on this list. They're from Thunderbolts. The first one is Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. That's a mouthful every time I say it. But she's back, and she's kind of pulling the strings behind the scene, trying to set up the Thunderbolts to make them look like these evil figures that Sentry can then take out, and he can be perceived as Earth's mightiest hero in the eyes of the public, right? Well, she's been pulling the strings for a couple projects now, and while she's not a physical threat, she is villainous inherently. Even at the end of the movie, she's still up to no good. I'm gonna say Val, as someone who pulls the strings, I will go, shoot, this is tough. B tier with Val, I'll put her like right here, behind Cassandra Nova, because she is, a fun character. There are moments where Julie Louis-Dreyfus' line deliveries hit, and she's pulling the string. She's clever, right? I'll give her that. B tier feels right for her. And the last villain on this list is the Void, the evil persona of Sentry that takes over and really doesn't mess around, just wants to destroy everything and strip all hope from humanity, right? Pretty depressing, pretty on the nose in a way, because this villain is basically a physical manifestation of the deeper themes in the movie that tackle mental health, that tackle depression, those inner demons that we all have. And so I really thought that for the themes of the film, this villain worked. We didn't get a ton of this character, and really this persona didn't come out until like the final act of the movie, but when Void is on screen, it's pretty horrifying. You're just seeing people get turned to shadows in the streets of New York. It's like, imagine if this was legit. And they also teed up this character's dark side, right? Bob's dark side to maybe come out in future films like Doomsday, and that has me thinking, ooh, imagine if Doom gets a hold of the Void. That would be horrifying. So yeah, we'll see what's at play with that, but I'm gonna say the Void is in B tier for me, right? A solid villain, especially for the movie they're in. I'm gonna go right above Val with the Void, and that is gonna round out the MCU villains ranking in the post-Endgame era. Again, only one truly elite villain in my opinion, and that's Goblin. Good to solid, great, amazing, fine right here, moments to shine, forgettable, and then outright bad. So yeah, that does it for my ranking of the MCU villains in the post-Endgame era. Let me know yours in the comments down below, and hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and be on the lookout for more videos coming very soon. But thank you guys, as always, for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.